So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the concept of a functional state. What we have observed at Strategies over the years is that every single development strategy, whether it is developed by a government at national level, government at local level, a development partner, even the continental strategies, they are premised on a key factor, that there exists a functional state, that is a state with the desire and the competency to develop in that particular area, whether it is health, whether it is education, whether it is employment. However, what we have seen over the years is that, one, this presumption can be false in some cases, and most certainly the functionality of the state varies from one state to another, and yet we are often bringing development strategies that are the same for all states. So what we would like to see happen at Strategies is for the functionality of the state to be assessed at the beginning of every single development strategy, and for the strengthening of this functionality to be an integral part of every development strategy. What are we talking about when we say the functional state? In our assessment, it is three major things: the presence of the state, the ability of the state to offer security and sustainability, and the ability of the state to give its citizens hope. What do we mean by the presence of the state? The first thing, which is often ignored, is life cycle administration. Being able to deliver birth certificates, national identity cards, death certificates. One of the key factors in Africa that is hindering development is conflict. And when you go to the conflict regions, from the Sahel to the Horn of Africa to northern Cameroon and northern Nigeria, you find one thing in common. In the areas where there is conflict, the state is almost absent. These are the parts of the country where people don't have birth certificates, they don't have national identity cards. The state itself is unable to know exactly whom its citizens are in these areas. Presence also means, beyond this life cycle administration, can be measured at a social level. Do the citizens have basic services for the survival of human beings? Water, electricity, healthcare, education. Is the state present also at an economic level? Are there roads? Is there education to provide skills for people who will have employment later on? Is there economic infrastructure to enable people to do business? How is land managed? Do citizens have the possibility to access land, to own land, in order to be able to make investments? So the presence of the state is something that we need to assess very, very carefully and determine in development strategies how we reinforce that presence, because we are already in the situation today in Africa where, when the state has been absent, non-state armed groups have been able to move in, give people any one of those services. Sometimes it comes under the guise of security, sometimes it is economic benefits, sometimes they come with so-called education, but they are able to take over part of the presence of the state And that is what makes them able to install themselves and to become a real threat then to this functional state. The second element that we have to look at is security and sustainability. Security, of course, in the sense of state security services which are at the service of the citizen, not at the service of government officials, not at the service of party bigwigs, but really and truly at the service of the citizen. But in addition to that, for that security to be sustainable, you must have a functional judicial system. Citizens must feel like if harm befalls me, if a crime is committed against me, there is a system where I can go to and get redress. If that does not exist, security becomes flimsy, it is whimsical, and the state is not functional. Another element of safety and security is safety and security in a sustainable manner is the fundamental respect of basic human rights. If human rights are not being respected, the citizen is not secure. If citizens do not feel like I have the right to express myself, I have the right to education, I have the right to my home and the safety and security of my home, then security is not sustainable. The other element of this sustainability is collective citizens groups being present and able to carry out actions. This is media, this is trade unions, these are development associations. For security for citizens to be sustainable, we must have these groups present and acting in order to defend the fundamental rights of those citizens. The third element that is important for a functional state, we have talked about presence, we have talked about security and sustainability. The third element, extremely important, is hope. A state must be able to provide its citizens with the hope that tomorrow is going to be a better day. Where does that hope come from? Hope comes from two key things we'd like to bring up. There are others, but two key. One is the economy. So a state must organize itself to provide its citizens with education, with training skills, and with the possibilities of employment. People have hope when they know that they have the dignity of a job. The dignity of a job means that you have your own money. You are not dependent on an elite. You are not dependent on a village association. You are not dependent on a parent. You have the ability to work, to earn your livelihood, and to make decisions about your own life. So economic environment that enables people to set up companies, create jobs, and be able to give that hope to citizens. The second element has to do with the climate. And climate is both in sustainability and with hope. Climate is a changing factor, and the ability of the state to provide responses in that changing environment is an indicator of its ability to cope with change and therefore to give its citizens hope. So the ability of a state to manage climate means that it can manage changing conditions which are beyond its control. Means that it can work with its citizens to find solutions to things that occur to that community or to that country. So hope is essential. It is hope that migrants are looking for. When people go through the desert, get onto boats to try to go to a different country, it is because they have lost hope in the environment in which they are in. Not only are things bad today, but they don't have a horizon. They don't have that sense that their government can manage the changing environment which is around to give them, as citizens, hope. So, what are we saying? Not every state has to be perfectly functional. Of course not. But what do we as development actors have to do? We have to have scales of functionality. We have to be able to assess the degree of functionality of a state. How present is it on its national territory? How good is it at offering security and sustainability? Does it have the competence and the ability to provide hope? That assessment, whether we are working on education, whether we are building roads, whether we are working on safety and security for the nation, that assessment must be done so that in partnering with state institutions, inbuilt in the development strategy are key actions. One, of helping that state itself to become aware of its degree of functionality or dysfunctionality. And two, in identifying with that state the ways in which it can be strengthened through training, through planning, through technology and equipment, through better strategy and better implementation. All of the time, our development strategies should be reinforcing the functionality of the state. Without a functional state, without a state that wants to develop and is continuously building the capacity to develop, there is no development. So let's take a look at the functionality of the state and let us, from here on out, integrate it into our strategies for development. Whether we are a national government, a continental institution, or a local government for a small village, the functionality of the state is essential.